Hello everybody, I am Maya Joy and welcome back. In today's video, I would like to speak about why so many people believe that they were famous in a past life. I don't know about you guys, but I am super interested in past lives. I think it's absolutely fascinating to be able to explore our prior existences, and I think that it helps us a lot in our spiritual awakening to embrace the concept that maybe this is not the first time around, that maybe what we're experiencing now and learning now is somehow building on something that we've experienced before. And I think when we can get in touch with another aspect of our identity, with another aspect of who we've been before, it can better help us to understand what is truly of our soul versus what are sort of imprints or conditioning of our personality in this lifetime. But if you do a lot of research about past lives or talk to people about past lives, you'll quickly find that a lot of people believe that they were somebody famous. And you'll also find that if you Google somebody famous, like say Elvis Presley or something like that, that you'll find dozens of people claiming that they were Elvis Presley, for example. So how can that be? Why do so many people believe that they were famous in a past life? Well, here's a couple of my theories. Of course, I do believe that at some point in our history, all of us experience some level of fame. I mean, it's something that we need to experience to come into our power and grow our soul. So it's likely that you were a prominent figure at some point in your soul history. Somebody had to have been Abraham Lincoln. Somebody had to have been Elvis Presley. Somebody had to have been Michael Jackson, etc. So in some cases, people claiming or having a strong feeling that they were somebody famous in a past life is definitely genuine. And I think some indications that you were genuinely famous in a past life could be if you have your North Node in Aquarius, South Node in Leo. That could be an indication. Also, if you have your South Node in the 10th house, like especially something like, say, South Node in the 10th house and in Leo, that could be an indication that, right, you may have really had a very strong creative gift and you may have been prominent. So that's one indication. More often, I think that people report being famous in a past life due to an actual flaw in the way that past lives are often remembered. Usually the way that people tap into their past lives is through a process of hypnosis. And I am a big believer in hypnosis. I believe that when we can relax our conscious mind, then our subconscious awareness or even our superconscious awareness can more easily be heard and experienced. And I think that our subconscious and superconscious, I do believe that our soul memories exist there, that we're all sort of carrying them around, but we're so busy taking in all the stimuli from this material dimension that we often are not perceiving the kind of the undercurrent where all that information exists. Usually what happens in a past life regression is that some sort of hypnotherapist will lead a person through a meditation and slowly bring them into a more relaxed state, and to get their sort of conscious mind out of the way and cultivate a more spiritual energy. And then the hypnotherapist will start asking the person questions. And a lot of times the questions are things like, look around. What do you see? What do you see around you? What time period is it around you? And then usually they'll get to the question, sort of, who are you? Or what name do you hear around you? What name are people calling out? What name first comes to mind for you? That kind of stuff. And this is usually, not always, there are different forms of hypnosis, but this is usually the type of thing that occurs. And I had my first regression in 2017. The first time that I ever tried to access a past life, I went through this process and I was asked the question, what do you see around you? And like I clearly knew in that moment, like, that I was in Prussia, and I saw like the castles and the old buildings, and I saw people dressed in like clothing that was from the 1800s, and I really, really felt a profound experience of being there. And, you know, I took that in for a while. I saw like the horses and carriages and everything, and it was, you know, it was really beautiful. And then the question was asked, I believe the way it was asked is like a really quick, often they ask questions really quick so that your conscious mind doesn't have a chance to get involved. And it was like, what is the first name that comes to mind? Like, what is the first name that comes to mind? And then there was the implication that the first name that came to mind was who you were. And so the first name that came to mind for me, it was very, very clear. And it was Frederick Wilhelm. Frederick Wilhelm. And like there was a face affiliated with it, handsome, dark hair, all this. And from there on, the experience was leading me into like, okay, so who is this Frederick Wilhelm? Like, it was implied, like, who are you? You know, what's the essence of this life? And yeah, it was a profound experience, or I enjoyed the experience. However, afterwards, I kind of thought, I don't know, something about that doesn't seem quite right. I get the sense that this Frederick Wilhelm is a real person, because I really saw clear images of him, his dress. I saw him standing in front of like this political building, and I don't know, like I got the sense like this is in my subconscious or my superconscious, this Frederick Wilhelm. But is it really me? Like, is this really me? And I remember like reflecting on it later that day and going to bed, and something told me like the next day, why don't you maybe Google and see if you can find this person? Like, why don't you see if you can find Frederick Wilhelm? And so I did. So I Googled him, and I found out that he was the king of Prussia, or he was royalty. And, you know, that really made sense to me. It was like, okay, so definitely my soul is connected to Prussia, and definitely in the mid to late 1800s. And I think that it makes perfect sense. Like, if you take somebody back to a past life in their time period and you ask them, what's the first name that comes to mind, that a lot of people, especially in past times, they're going to remember not necessarily their own identity right away. It depends. I mean, some people will, but a lot of people, I think, are going to remember a key figure. They're going to remember a key figure because that key figure, that's who they saw the most. That's who they saw more than themselves. And that's the name that they heard the most. In a lot of cases, if you go into a past life regression and you remember Elvis Presley, I think it's a good indication that you were alive at the same time as Elvis Presley or Marilyn Monroe or whatever, but it's not necessarily an indication that you were that person. It could be, but it isn't always. And so later on, I did more past life regression work, and I did it with a very skilled therapist, and I'm so grateful for that. And eventually, you know, through deeper levels of hypnosis, I also went back to that same time period, but I started to see myself as a young woman, as a matter of fact, not a man, and I started to see myself like drawing and sketching and writing and all this stuff. And I eventually came to realize like who I really was in that lifetime. So I was born under the rulership of Frederick Wilhelm in Prussia. But what I initially remembered was just the key figure of that time, who happened to be in my mind at the moment that I went back to. In most cases, when people report to be a famous figure from another period in time, what's really happening is that their subconscious is drawing up real memories, but they're drawing up memories of images that they had seen over and over and over again in that lifetime, and oftentimes those images are, as you would expect, of very key public figures or famous individuals from that time period. However, I do think that there's a couple other explanations for this phenomenon as well. Super extraordinary individuals like individuals that are so multi-talented and that have such a big energy about them. They may have been not just like one singular soul that embodied that individual, but it may have been like an entire soul group. So we can become one with the energy of our entire soul group. And sometimes, like every once in a while, I think an entire soul group, especially in the past, like when there weren't as many bodies on earth to choose from, like an entire soul group may have incarnated together within one individual. And that could account for why, say, 5 or 10 individuals might feel that they were part of that same person. Another explanation for this phenomenon is actually some exercises that we do when we're in the higher realms. Maybe some of you remember your time in the higher realms. I'm not sure. I kind of do. And one thing that I know is that when we're in the higher realms, when we're with our soul groups, it's really about like learning and experiencing. And one thing that's really common when we are in between lives and we're in the higher realms is sort of what I want to call like soul theater. And basically how this works is we get to like play different roles in order to understand various perspectives on any given life experience. Like we're kind of able to ask the question like, what would it have been like to be this person, or how would I have felt in this person's role? And what we're able to do is we're able to actually like pop into another person's or another soul's experience and live the experience through their eyes. This is for our learning and for our growth. And typically when we do this sort of soul theater, it's usually with somebody who was very close to us in a previous lifetime. So maybe we pop into the experience of our mother or something like that, and then we get to like experience what it was like for her to hold us as a baby and love us and all of that stuff. But I think it's also possible, just depending on how liberal our sorts of guides and helpers are and teachers in the higher realms, that if we had a genuine curiosity, say, you know, what was it like to be the political leader of the time period of the lifetime that we were just in, or what was it like to be the rock star of the time period that we were just in, and if it could help us grow and develop, we would probably be permitted to pop into that person's experience. And in that way, we may have lived as that political figure, as that rock star, as that poet, or whoever it is. In our soul memory, we may remember being that person. But it may not be that we actually lived out their entire incarnation. It may be that we were permitted, because of our soul curiosity, to be able to pop into that experience and live it through a time. As much as I might tell myself, for example, yes, like, you know, I'm just Maya KahNah right now, or you're you and I'm me. It's really not that simple. It's really not like that. We're all very, very much connected. And when we're not here in this material dimension, this 3D dimension, we're much more able to, the best way I can really describe it is just pop into other experiences. We're much better able to switch perspectives. We're much better able to take on different appearances. As a matter of fact, my understanding is that when we're in the higher realms, we can appear however we want. We can be literally whoever we want to be, and we can appear as any of our favorite moments in this life or any other life that we've lived, including future lives. And so the sense of identity in time and place are very, very much malleable and mobile. So anyway, guys, hopefully you have enjoyed this video and my theories on why so many people believe that they were key famous figures in other lifetimes. And if you have enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have, please feel free to come back any Friday for a new video here on the Maya's Dream channel. Thank you so much for watching, and namaste. Bye.